Just first up, Minister, tell me the coal seam gas industry, is it safe?
Yes, it is. We already have an established coal seam gas industry in Queensland, have done now for well over a decade, supplying gas to drive our energy generators. Not only do we burn coal, we also use this coal seam gas for electricity currently.
You have been quoted as saying, not at any cost. What does that mean?
Well, what it means is that we've put in place a stringent regime of laws and regulations designed to ensure the highest level of environmental protection. Yes, we want to see this industry develop. It's important for Queensland's future, both in terms of wealth and job generation. But it can't come at the cost of our environment, and that's the point that I've made to reassure landholders that we're not going blindly down this alley to see the development of this industry. We are at all steps along the way making sure it is done safely and sustainably.
One of the kind of major themes that came out of our journey was when the EAs were released, I'm talking QGC's EAs, this concept, and for us a very visceral concept for particularly farmers and landholders, that they didn't know.
You're talking about the environmental approval for QGC?
That's right.
What we've seen over the last couple of years is, with the development of this new industry, is that our history has been regulating a comparatively small industry for domestic gas production. When landholders say, you're playing catch-up, I don't think that's quite correct, because in terms of the coal seam gas to LNG industry, basically that exponential growth that will occur, they're still at the exploration and approval stage. So that we're not sort of chasing the ball. We are in fact ahead of the curve by putting in place a very stringent regime of laws and regulations before the approvals are granted for the ramp-up of this industry. And of course, in terms of the new regulatory regime, it will have and does have retrospective effect for those approvals already granted. So when you talk about the existing domestic gas industry, the rules that are being put in place now for the export industry will be applied retrospectively to the existing industry. So overall, we're seeing much tougher environmental regulation being applied for the industry as it exists now, as well as for the future.
It doesn't seem a very fair there's a bit of a power imbalance going on here when you're expecting farmers who are really busy to, on top of that, if they know it all, because they haven't been directly informed of what is going to happen to their property, to respond to that in an adequate way.
I think that's a fair comment if it was made 12 months ago. But
this was happening. This is what we saw. We actually went around with people that were being told of what was happening to their farm. This is now.
And what those landholders need to do is to get in contact with my department, because over the last 12 months we've put in place a rigorous regime of recognising landholders' rights, as well as a code of practice which establishes a minimum level of performance required of the industry and how they go about interacting with landholders. I've met with many landholders myself and heard exactly the comments that you've just relayed. And that's
but you can understand their concern.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why we've held many public forums over the last 6 to 12 months. We've actually brought in and passed new laws in the Parliament recognising landholders' rights, imposing a code of practice on companies, because, as is always the case, there are companies out there who will always do the right thing, that really do strive for the best possible practice that can be put in place. But there's always those outliers. Some companies who want to try and cut short timeframes, etc. What we've said to the industry is that we expect this minimum performance from you. Cutting corners is not good enough, and we now have the laws in place to take action against them should they try and go down that path.
We've talked to 60 farmers, and we've been quite open about it. I mean, the vast majority, to be honest, if they want to say no, and I'm talking not compensation, but if they want to say no, we don't want this, and we don't want it on our prime agricultural land. They're saying they don't have the rights to stop it. That's the core issue. That's the core issue.
That's understood because, as I said, the public interest is served, and it's been recognised for over 100 years under the laws of this country and state that to access resources subterraneously requires access to land. The fundamental question is how you do it in such a way that minimises disruption to farmers' production systems, and secondly, in a way that provides fair compensation for that disruption. Now, again, I've met many farmers that say, yes, we've agreed to a financial package, but in terms of the new fences we get, the new roads through our properties, these are some of the longer-term benefits that they look for. But does that mean everybody's going to be happy? I don't for one moment try and suggest that. But what we're also doing, the second part of your question in terms of that very highly productive land, in fact, some of the best soil in the world, we're recognising under our strategic cropping land policy and framework that we're currently finalising.
And coal seam gas is included within that?
Yes, but it's obvious that the disruption or potential damage to those soils is far less for the coal seam gas industry compared to open cut coal mining. But nevertheless, that framework will still apply.
The issue is here, obviously, the more, obviously, the companies say it's safe. I mean, I believe they're going back to the position where they're trying to say the coal balloons are not part of the Great Artesian Basin and not connected. If there's more and more incidents are coming out when we haven't even got the LNG project off the ground, it's not very good, is it? It's not a very good message to what is about to come in terms of the size and scope of what we're going to see in this state.
Well, when you look at the two projects that have been approved so far, conditionally approved so far, then attached to each of those approvals are 600 conditions each, 1,200 in total, that require, before they start extracting the gas, they need to address. And that includes issues in dealing with the water that is produced, making sure there are zero discharges, etc. So I think what that indicates is that the process that these companies have to go through our Coordinator General, before they get approvals, their applications are exhaustively studied, and where additional conditions of approval need to be applied, they get applied. Now, it's up to these companies to now apply those conditions before they will be able to start extracting the gas. And that, again, I think is an important signal to send to landholders, is that these companies just aren't going through the process and getting boxes ticked willy-nilly. These are exhaustive processes that they go through at state level, and then they've got to go through it again federally. And that's where confidence should be had that we're dealing with this, one, in a very open and accountable way, but in a way that, as I said earlier, goes to establishing a safe and sustainable industry.
The bottom line with the criticism against that, and there's truckloads of it, both from the regulation that you've introduced in Queensland and federally, is that it's regulation on the run, it's adaptive management, it's not preventative, it's not precautionary rather. That you can say we've got 1,200 regulations in Queensland, 300 federally, but it doesn't matter because they're not about actually preventing damage, they're about managing damage.
No, I disagree, and disagree strongly with that. As I said earlier, these companies, in terms of the coal seam gas to LNG industry, are not producing gas at this point in time. There is a small domestic gas industry which have received approvals dating back over 10 years. But in terms of the expansion of the industry, the big expansion, that has not occurred at this point in time. So the rules, regulations, laws, procedures that are being put in place now are actually before putting in place.
But that's not my question.
No.
My question is that they're dealing with the problems as they develop, not before. I mean, the whole concept of the process is go ahead. It's going to be approved.
No,
but
not
we
at all.
will monitor and record as you go, as opposed to being exact about what exactly the potential damage is going to be, and on that basis, then make rules and regulations about what you can and cannot do.
I think we need to be clear here that an adaptive management regime provides the best level of ongoing protection for landholders, for the state of Queensland, for anyone who's concerned about it. How we used to regulate the mining industry was that the approvals that they got back in the 60s or 70s would be the same approvals that would apply for the remainder of the life of that mine. Nothing would change, despite evidence, technology, knowledge improving along the way. What the purpose of the adaptive management process is about is applying the knowledge that we have now for the purposes of approval, and as is always the case, as our knowledge improves over time with the development of better science, that gets applied. It doesn't sit there and grow mould and wait for the next company to come along and apply it then. It gets applied at the time that it needs to for existing processes. That actually provides the best level of protection because whilst we have a degree of confidence, a good degree of confidence now, we won't ignore better science and better evidence as time goes by.